Hello and welcome back to the Londonderry Bands Forum to the Beat of the Drum series of podcasts for Good Relations Week. This podcast is entitled Band Life During and After Lockdown, and today I'm joined by Stephen Bailie from Ballywalter Flute Band and Matthew Warwick of Castlegore Flute Band, who are both committee members of the Flute Band Association of Northern Ireland. This episode looks at life without the band for the last year, what bands were doing during lockdown, and what they're doing now emerging from lockdown. What did you think when the band had to stop in March 2020 because of COVID?
Thanks for having us, Stephen. It was a bit strange. We're all watching the news and watching the situation develop, and all of a sudden everything was stopped. We were due to go to Limerick as part of the FBA mass band the following weekend. We had accommodation booked, bus booked and all. And I'm sure lots of members from across the Flute Band Association in Northern Ireland were looking forward to it. It would have been a first for me. And of course, that was cancelled. Our dinner, our awards dinner for our own choice contest was to be the following weekend. It was cancelled as well. Band practice was cancelled. How long would it be? Initially, we were thinking something like 6 weeks. Aye, right, dead on. And it ended up being a lot longer. And it ended up being the longest sort of hiatus in our 75-year history in the band of having no practices. And I was really dreading getting the band back together. Would the band survive it? Would people use it as an excuse not to come back? So there's a lot of uncertainty and fear over the survival of the band after it.
Yeah, I think, Stephen, the thing was that really none of us, it was the unknown for us all. But I don't think any of us expected it to be so long. I think we were just hoping maybe 4 or 6 weeks and get back at it. Yeah, and I say it was just really, I think none of us knew. I think that was the whole thing about it, was none of us knew. And as Matthew said, so many plans, so many things that were planned, even their own bands, even the FBA, likes of going to Limerick. And I know it came to the stage, we were just waiting for the call from Limerick to say that we wouldn't be going, and that was a case of where I've been in contact with them several times, and deep down we knew that was going to happen with other things that had been cancelled also. And but I think it was just a shock, I think, for us all.
We were both involved with the Flute Band Association, well, with your own band, Ballywalter and Castlegore. You were going to go to Limerick as well. How important do you think that doing events like that is for flute bands?
Well, in the last number of years, we sort of got the Flute Band Association and doing sort of joined events together, and I think it's been really healthy for our part music bands in general, allowing people from across the province to come together, like-minded people having the same difficulties, recruiting players, maintaining players, uniforms, getting music arranged, etc., and you can share those. You find out you're not alone. And you find that, the like of myself and a grade 3 band, you talk to people in the senior bands that they face the same problems and the same struggles week on week, and you all of a sudden you're not alone. It's something that you're facing. Sometimes you often think that where we're from in Ballymena, we've a couple of other part music bands. We have Castlegore at one side, Ballymena Young Conquerors and Ballyclare Victoria on the other side of the mountain, and you're sort of competing with players, but apart from the rest of the time, it's blood and thunder bands all the way. And sometimes you think you're hitting your head off a brick wall trying to teach people to read music and recruit new players and everything else. But I've found since coming together doing the joint ventures, be it the rehearsals in the Ulster Scots Centre here in Belfast, or the Lord Mayor's show, or the like of Deloy's parade, it has been really, really nice to go and meet other people, like-minded people, and find that you are part of a bigger, wider community.
Yes, Stephen, I think it's very important with regard to getting us out in the public and also taking us into new areas. That doesn't matter. You talked about going, I think, to Donegal with Hamilton last, or to maybe St. Patrick's, or was it Mayo? Sorry, we're down.
Mayo, 2 years ago.
Limerick, it was going to be probably a new experience. I know some individual bands had done that Limerick parade previously, and but I think for us as a Muller organisation, maybe that's the wrong way to put it, to get us all together, and it is bringing us all together. It is. I think it is bringing us closer, as Matthew says. Yes, there is still that wee bit of competition with regard to bands. There is rivalry. It's just natural, I think, when you are competing, but it's also lovely to meet these people in a social environment. Matthew said, like we know, Lord Mayor's Show, Dunloy Parade, we were in Banbridge on Friday evening, and it was, I think there's maybe 8 or 9 art bands represented on Friday night. And but I think it is really important. I think some of the problems we do have is there's not a lot of opportunities for us to get out there, and we are limited where we can go, just with the nature of our bands and also what's happening. But for me, going to Limerick, I know we had talked about possibility of maybe thinking about the Lord Mayor's Show, sorry, not the Lord Mayor's Show in Dublin, the St. Patrick's Day Parade in Dublin as well, later on.
Almost overnight then, your banding life changed. What did you do in them early days to keep together, whether it was any virtually or even social distancing or walking or whatever? What did you do in them early days of lockdown?
I don't know if you say this out loud or not, but some of my own band wouldn't be the most technologically proficient. So trying to organise Zoom at the outset was hilarious. But we got there eventually, and we rendezvoused once a week and we kept in touch. But over time, I found that just our WhatsApp group was a much better way of keeping in touch. And it turned into like an episode of the Great British Bake Off. People were putting up what they had made this week, being trapped in the house, and all these different recipes and who could make the best sausage rolls and things like that. And it just turned into, social media for social conversation between friends who didn't get to see each other for 2 hours on a Tuesday night, as we have done since time immemorial, So trying to make sure, the one thing I did notice was that maybe some of the senior older members who wouldn't have been as proficient on the technological side of things, just giving them a wee ring to see how things were going on, because it would be very easy for them to feel excluded and not part of the conversation.
Yeah, I really think until February, none of us really had thought about Zoom or heard about Zoom. And but I know one of the first things we was we actually opened a Zoom account, and it became our band practices became Zoom on a Monday evening. We tried this an hour and a half. I know the first week we tried to do a rehearsal, and it just was a disaster. Different speeds. It was good crack, and but throughout, it was a Monday night. We play your cards right, to quizzes, to charades, and it was, I think, the important thing was keeping us all together. Especially in the early days where there was a very much lockdown mentality where people weren't going anywhere. As Matthew said, it was also quite important to speak to the senior members of the band, just to say, hi, how are you? Some of them, unfortunately, now were living by themselves, and we all know it can be very lonely.
Ourselves in the Bands Forum and the Flute Band Association arranged a lot of like virtual performances where you recorded yourself. How challenging were them, and did you enjoy taking part in them?
I enjoyed taking part. I found the whole recording and getting all the ducks in a row to do it right, and so the dogs weren't barking in the background, and the wife wasn't bursting in to make a cup of tea and things like this. Eventually got bits and pieces recorded. I tried to do the same for our band, and so a few other bands were putting them out. We had 7 or 8 maybe contributed to the You'll Never Walk Alone project at the start, and really enjoyed that. But we tried to do it as a band ourselves. But we found I was trying to encourage with a big stick our players to do it, and I was trying to stick everything together. But again and again, people came to me saying that we're in the band for the band nature. Go back to the German root of the word band, Bund. This binding together of people, the social aspect of it. And a lot of our players said, they don't want to play the flute in their kitchen in their own to the cat. They like playing with other people and making music with other people. So I could understand and sympathise with that point of view. But at the same time, I was really grateful for the opportunity to take the flute out of the box, because I'm not someone who would practice in the house on my own. And it gave me motivation to do so.
I think, Stephen, all the virtual performances, it also put it out to a new audience. I know we had done a couple later on in the year in Ballywalter for the 1st of July and the 12th of July, but there was the likes of the one that yourselves had started on, and then the Flute Band Association, we did one later on, just did the March O Comrades. But it is actually quite scary with technology now of where those videos are watched. I know, they just weren't watched in Northern Ireland, Ireland, the British Isles. They're actually watched throughout the world. And the same again, it has to be great exposure for flute banding to show that what we can do. And as I say, yeah, a bit like Matthew said, some of the difficulties we were having was getting, and I also admit it was me sitting down for that half an hour just to get it recorded. I know Andrew Douglas with the FBA, when he was pulling his hair out, trying to get people to send it in, come out very well. I know we did ours slightly differently in Ballywalter, where we weren't in the house. That was when lockdown was slightly relaxed, was that we ended up in round the harbour, in round the War Memorial in Ballywalter. I think there was 5 of us in the base end. We actually had to climb over the wall of the harbour onto the rocks. Very, very effective, and I say it was enjoyable. It really was, and it was just something else that none of us had really been involved in before.
We ran the March as well, especially yourself, Ballywalter, Stephen Bailie. How did the band react to that, and Matthew as well with Castlegore?
React to it?
Yes.
It was obsession. No question about that. We were obsessed. It was morning, noon, and night. Our members were out. It was great because it, especially back to the early days when you first released it. I know in around Donegal, I was walking roads, lanes that I'd never been in before, right down the peninsula. I think we had the advantage where there were so many walks that we could do, and it was great. It really was. As I jokingly said, at times you were going to get a claim from us for us having to buy new uniforms, because people had lost so much weight, and it was all that mental thing. Also getting in the fresh air, seeing what was going on, and but no, it was superb. It really was.
Yeah, I second that. It came. We maybe didn't have the numbers taking part as Ballywalter did, but I think we were consistently in the sort of the top 10 bands and whatever. And myself, I tried to get in 20,000 steps a day, and I ended up losing close to 3 stone over the head of it. It was great. Now, saying often it's a good job you only listen to the audio and not the video here to see that I've put most of it back on again, but that's another story. We maybe need to run it again. But it became a great way of having another reason to chat to people in the band. Sunday night or on a Friday night, how's everybody's steps looking this week? And if they were a bit low by comparison, come on, we can't let the band down. We can't let the name of the band down. And we had people in the band taking part in forwarding their steps that would never do something like that on their own behalf, or never sign up, to a competition individually. But as soon as you put the name of the band beside it, there's something triggers at that other. You can't let the side down, and it was absolutely fantastic. And we were sharing pictures of where we were and the weather and everything else, and different devices, and who was getting new walking boots, and it opened up a whole new aspect, rather than just talking about music and performances and uniforms and the usual drama of the week-to-week running of a band, and a completely different side. And you got to find out things about your band members. And our members are from sort of Ballymena Clough-Mills to Carrickfergus. You cover a big sort of catchment area, our band, and you're finding things about where everybody sort of lived and what they were doing on their own town land and their own doorstep. And it was just good crack. And for those sort of 3 months, it was a laser focus and distracted you from all the other nonsense that was going on in the media.
Have you continued on with, has any of the bands continued on with doing anything like that in the last year or since, or this year?
We threatened to resume it this year, but I think it was the perfect storm of everybody was at home, nobody was at their place of work, everybody wasn't supposed to travel too far, you had time to devote to it. I think I said, right, let's revive this year again, and people said, oh, I'm too busy, I've got this to do, I've got that to do. But I think maybe next year it's something that even maybe we as an association could revive, Stephen, and see if anybody wanted to sign up to it. But I don't know if it would achieve the same traction as it did in that particular window.
No, really, if it was a case of where, I know you say we had spoken, you were maybe trying to revive it, but I think unfortunately people were getting back to work. Life was, not saying getting back to normality, but there was a small bit of normality coming in. As Matthew says, for those first 2-3 months, there was nothing, and it was brilliant. It was really a release. It was just, I don't know what some of us would have done without it, really. It must, you have to give yourselves great credit, but I think also for us, the most important thing was that for Ballywalter, we couldn't let Britannia win it, seeing they were a non-marching band. I think it'd been quite funny that a non-parading band won a fit the march. So, but I must admit it was, and I think it did come to a stage when everybody was watching for your results. It was as bad as that, and people were, where are they? Why are they not out? And it did become obsessive, but obsessive in a positive way.
It was the wet nights where you found yourself doing laps of the kitchen table just to get your steps up for maybe an hour or 2 hours. Like anybody else looking in would think you were demented, but that's how seriously we're going. And I tried to set a limit of so many 20,000 steps a day. And, okay, if you didn't get them in before 12 midnight, they would roll on to your steps the next day. But for me, I had to hit this, and it became compulsion. And I don't know if we'll ever achieve that again, but it was definitely a good crack while it lasted.
Did you actually look out for any other bands, especially in their scores? And were you happy if you beat them?
Yeah, I think we all have our personal rivalries, say in the park music bands. We're all in wee clusters, I think, throughout the province. And you look to your neighbours, you look to your closest rivals. If you say, not rivals in the sense that you don't get on, but rivals in your catchment area, for recruiting players and things like that. So it was a case of, we have to make sure we beat them. And then it became the individual thing. If you got yourself onto the name of the top 20, list it for steps, and then that became, I need to beat such and such a boy. Sure, he's only a packle of a body. He couldn't walk a length himself. I need to show that I can beat him. And for me, I was looking at some of for instance, like the Ballywalter ones. Well, sure, they're all at sea level. Their steps, they've no altitude to climb. It's completely flat down there. How's that? Us hillbillies have to represent the sheep farmers and everything else. So we have to do it at altitude, So it was amazing the silly notions that come into your head whenever you were doing it, but it was all part of the experience.
Yeah, I think, Stephen, you're right. With ourselves here in sort of the North Down, Mid Down, with the likes of CLB, Ballygan, Ballyloan, and I think, but for me, yes, it was nice to see that you were beating those people, but also the important thing was that their members were taking part. I think that was the big thing for me, was that I think there was very few of our members in the end didn't participate in it. I think we were well up in number wise. So of course, the more you have, of course your total is going to get higher. But I think the important thing was, the likes of the Portaferry Accordion Band down the, I know they're like so many bands now, names Portaferry, probably very few members actually live in that town now. They were about the yards as well. They were there, taking part, and that was nice to see. Also, it was nice to see bands that, that you had never heard of. I'm sure there's some of the boys in the Northwest wonder where Ballywalter was. We think we're a big city when we're in the yards. But take us throughout the province, we're not so big. But I think for me, it was seeing, and I think the majority of the Flute Band Association bands did get involved, which was good for us.
And how encouraging was it whenever you seen people talking about like their mental health and about their physical health and all during that time as well?
I think it's essential. you know, it was a time whenever people's lives had been turned upside down, their social circles turned upside down, their daily rituals and habitual practices. So to have something that was encouraging people to exercise. So physically, you know, walking's brilliant, great for the heart and everything else, but I think it probably even better mentally for keeping the head cleared, level, good for sleep levels, for dealing with stress. And it's something that, you know, I've always enjoyed walking, you know, hill walking and things like that. And yeah, I'm lucky that I live in the middle of nowhere in the countryside and have a farm and plenty of countryside around me to walk. It's something I've always liked doing. But I think there was a lot of people, even within my own band, who started going for walks and looking for routes and maps and things to do that they never would have done before. So I was encouraging people to get their trainers on, leave the sofa and get outside. And I know some of them have kept up to this day.
Yeah, I think Stephen, the key was getting people out and about, because you know it could have been very easy to have stayed in the house and those four walls get on top of you. The physical health, yes, what Matthew was saying there was, I know what we were doing for a bit of crack also was asking the members in their walks to actually take photographs. And there were, you know, let's say, there were different areas that some people had never been down before, up country lanes, getting into the countryside, the fresh air. And but I think for me, it was very important that not only for the physical aspect of it, but also the mental, that people were out and about. I think then also it meant you were communicating with people with regard to it. And there was also that interaction. And that was a bit of crack. That was keeping people's, you know, not mental health going, but keeping people active. And but no, I think it was a combination. It was very important.
We're chatting there at the start a bit about and I think all the bands were in the same situation. I'll be a couple of weeks we'll be missing. Whenever them months were dragging on, what were you concerned about getting back again? And then what about the Orange Order's decision to cancel the 12th of July and so on?
I think for me, as I said earlier on, I think none of us expected it to be so long. But I think the Orange Order don't mean necessarily made a brave decision, because it's probably the biggest festival in Northern Ireland, so it's bringing the most people to the streets. And at that time in particular, I think it was a courageous decision. I think it was not brave, but I think it was the right decision to stop mass gatherings, because none of us were sure. Literally just ourselves and a few launch, and that was it.
We were similar. I could understand, you know, the Orange's decision to do it. I think it was the socially responsible thing to do, given the medical advice and everything else. But you know, to be brutally honest, we still met, and we walked from our band hall down to the local Orange Hall in the morning. Now there was only about 15 or 16 of us. There's quite a few people were shielding or had relatives that were shielding that weren't, you know, didn't want to come out, and that was fine. And we just did it in civvies. So we paraded all of 3/4 of a mile, and then played a few marches outside the local Orange Hall, and we took a cup of tea outside. It wasn't a bad day, and you know what? It did my heart the world of good. I was walking on air for the week after, just to get the chance to see people in real life from the band again, and also to have a few tunes with them. And some of the wee videos that we recorded playing outside the Orange Hall that day, they've went on to have like 2,000 and 3,000 views on YouTube and things like that. And do you know what? The playing's terrible, but I think it was the sheer joy of everybody getting to play a few marches again and coming together and meeting your friends. It was really, really, really good, and I was in big need of it. And then only a few weeks after that, we're lucky enough to come up and guest with the Hammies for what would have been the Derry Day, and parading down through the estates and the waterside. I really enjoyed that, and it was super to get out. A good big band, nice day. They staggered the bands and everything else. The folk that come out to watch, you know, at the end of their gardens was fantastic. It was a smashing summer's day, and again, it just gives you that wee lift. You know, you don't know how much the band means to you mentally, emotionally, until it's taken away from you. So to get that wee boost again, it just did me personally the world of good.
And the Churchill, Ballywalter, Castlegore all got to play a bit last summer whenever things were quiet down. But then when the spike came back up again, and you were probably looking to get back into practicing and all around September, October last year, then when the spike came up again, what was your reaction then about having to miss the band again?
Yeah, I think, Stephen, it was like everything. It was new to us all. I think we were probably devastated, because I think none of us expected it, back in March, April. I think we all were maybe hoping 2 or 3 months, 3 or 4 months. And then it was because very much the band is more than a band to the majority of us. It's also family. It's probably second, third family. Maybe not so much the first family, but second family. You know yourself. When you think about something at times, what I need done, nearly the first thing you turn to is somebody in the band. And that's more than just us getting together on a Monday night. So I think it was a bit of a body blow for everybody. That and probably then with the NIBA cancelling the October contest, which rightly was, it was just whack. It really was.
Yeah, you're sort of tuning in, and what was it Mondays and Thursdays, whenever the regulations, those meetings to wait and see the briefing to see what was changing, if anything was going to be relaxed, and you're sort of keeping your fingers crossed that there'd be something that would allow band practices again and everything else. And there was nearly light at the end of the tunnel in the autumn, and then it was taken away from us again quickly. So it was difficult, and as time goes on, you worry about younger members that maybe like learners who've just broken through into the ranks, and we all know how hard it is to retain young players these days. They've got so many other distractions, even just in the home with Netflix and Xbox 360 and PlayStations and all these sorts of things, never mind the multitude of other distractions that there is from other organizations. So I was heart feared that they would use that lengthy break to say no, I've broke the habit now, I'm not coming back to the band. So you're always sort of walking on eggshells to see when you put the flag up to tell everybody to come back again, would they come back? So it was definitely a nervous time.
And we had a period then of lockdown right up to probably around May, June this year. Whenever the decision was made, we were allowed to do outdoor practices. How did the band adapt to them?
We basically stood in the gardens of the parish church and played in a circle, and it was great. I say playing wasn't the best the first few marches, and it was just getting back together. It was, as Matthew said, it was just playing the flute. Nothing too complicated, even just for 3/4 of an hour, and it was brilliant. It really was.
Yeah, same as Stephen. We have a wee bit of space behind our band hall, and we set the chairs out on a Tuesday night, and people came and distanced everything else in the stands. Acquired a couple of gazebos in case there was a wee shower of rain that you could still play outside and have a wee bit of cover. Thankfully, May and June were pretty good. There was only one night we had to call off. There was bad hailstones and everything else, and I couldn't get over how well the practices were attended from the start of May when we were allowed back again. And all those youngsters that I was worried about, calling it a day, came back, and actually amazed that some of them had been doing maybe online lessons with their flute teachers at school and things like that, unbeknownst to me, and they came back much better players than they left, and more useful players to the band. So we were getting, we had 20 flutes for the first 8 weeks every week, and that wasn't everybody. I just couldn't believe it. And we just played our road marches and played, I used the time to arrange a few and get some new road marches and things like that up to try and refresh the repertoire a wee bit. But we finished every night at 9:15, and we stopped for a cup of tea, and folk were hanging about drinking tea until it was dark. And it's something that we've actually maintained now that we've moved inside again. We are still finishing early to allow that social aspect and people to come together and have a chat and a cup of tea and a bun. and it's doing us the world of good. Well, maybe not the waistlines, but socially.
Was there any sort of apprehension about going back, and what were the challenges, especially to going back to practice?
I think, Stephen, outside there wasn't really too many challenges. It was more a case of just keeping our distance. Because I think half the things is actually just common sense. Not be sitting on top of people, this sort of thing. So I really felt there was no challenges as such with outside. I think the bigger challenges was when the indoor opened up, and I say it was great that that's in around that same time that the Ulster Scots Agency had released funding for getting back to practices, and I know we were delighted to receive funding there to get some sort of screens, protective screens, hand sanitizer, and even in early with regard to the hall, was we just wearing masks when we were walking about. And but I really felt outside there wasn't as many challenges as inside, and also just having the members maybe with underlying health issues, them having the confidence to come back.
Yeah, I sort of the same as Stephen there. Everybody was glad to get back, but we had a few members who were maybe caring for elderly relatives who were vulnerable, who were a wee bit unsure, especially whenever we moved back inside. And we weren't able to move back into our own band hall. It's far too small. It's just a small single room old national school. So we've sort of decamped into the local Orange Hall, which is a much bigger facility. It allows us to be spaced out, a better ventilation and everything else. And we had a few who were reticent for the first couple of weeks, and we took pictures and shared it, and then they come back. And last Tuesday night, in fact, we had one of our elder members, a gentleman who's, as I say, is closer to 80 than to 70, came for the first because he felt it was the first time that he was confident to come out. He saw the arrangements that we made, and he said it was one of the first times he's been out the door for anything sort of normal since March last year. So it was a real boost to the rest of us to see him and to have him there. And I just worry now, things like, the winter's coming, there's not as much light outside, opening windows isn't going to be practical with heating and things like that. How long are we going to be doing this for? I would ideally like to move back up to old premises again, but, I can't really see it on the horizon at the minute. I have the thermometer taking temperatures and things like that going into the band room. Anybody that has a temperature, I will send home. Thankfully, I haven't had that problem so far. And the problem is, the more normality it gets, I think you would be prone to forgetting there are any issues and just worrying about the band and handing out music willy-nilly and everything else. And it's just trying to concentrate and remember there's always this underlying threat or risk, shall we say, of transmission. But there's things can happen. I'm trying to encourage some of our ones to take if they can, have access to them, like if a lateral flow. I take a lateral flow on a Tuesday night as soon as I get home from work before I go around to the band, because I'm heart feared that, if I had anything taken it in and smitten everybody else in the hall. But, there's wee steps that you can take like that there for your own peace of mind. But it's going to be interesting how long, we're going to have to follow this. I have a feeling that it's going to be this winter, certainly, before we get back into our hall again.
This summer, the Orange Order Apprentice Boys Royal Black Preceptories all did localised or smaller praise. What was your reaction to them, and did you enjoy taking part in them?
Ballywalter, it was a strange 12th day because we walked Ballywalter. I think we were finished for 12 o'clock. It was a very strange 12th of July. Don't know what the rest of the province feels, but for me, I really do enjoy the 12th more for the social aspect of it. Not the social aspect, but meeting people, that you don't see in 1 year or the other. It's strange, as I say, with ourselves here, it's the four sort of districts in and around the Ards, North Down, Hollywood, and there's people you don't see from one 12th to another. So it was a strange. I as I come up with yourselves and walked on Derry Day. It's probably a strange day more so for yourselves than anything else, where you didn't have to hang about too much, compared to other years, and for the main parade. And then Black Saturday, it was the Arts District. The lodges, they walked Newton Arts, and it was different, but great crowds about Newton Arts. Must have been another sort of an underlying thing with some of our members. It was great, not having to sit in a bus to go to South Down, as maybe the people in South Down were sitting going, great, don't have to sit in a bus to go to North Down. And but say it was a different, but I think the important thing was we were back on the streets parading.
Yeah, the localized 12th maybe didn't really affect us in Castlegore too much, because we accompany a lodge in Ballymena district, and Ballymena district, I think them and Kilkeel are the only two districts in the institution that march their own towns year on year. So our 12th is always in Ballymena. It's always the one district of 27 lodges, and it was the same this year again. But in fact, our 12th was bigger this year, because I think people had went onto the Parades Commission to see that, people who were maybe casual and didn't have family connections to bands or lodges looked to see where's the biggest parade. And, Ballymena, 15 bands and maybe 10 or 11 sets of lambeg drums. So we had a lot of strange faces on the street in Ballymena, and we had a crowd, the biggest crowd we've ever seen for 12th of July. It was more comparable to the County Antrim Black in terms of crowd that we had, and it was great. We did a 5-mile route around Ballymena. It was sweltering hot, but do you know what? The crowds were that good. We were just glad to get out and perform. And I think sometimes we forget that when we're on parade, the thousands of people that see us, we spend so much time sometimes about competitions and competing, and who else sees us on those days other than other bandsmen, and a few members of the public. Yet when you're out in parade, you are on display to thousands of people. And you can't go anywhere now without people recording you. And the amount of video cameras, particularly this year, recording it and putting clips up online. So, the exposure from it's wonderful. And, it's even hard to find a quiet place to try a wee new march out you haven't tried before, in case you make a hames of it and somebody puts it up online and makes you look stupid. But no, it was the same for Black Day. We had the Black District in Ballymena, again, the same 5-mile route, fantastic crowds. We had the Centenary Banner Parade was the week after Derry Day, and it was in Ballymena, and they got 40 bands of it from across the province. So it was really nice too to see different bands and different banners and things, and again, great crowds for it. So it's nice to be out again, and personally, I love parading, and that's what I'm in the band to do. Everything else is sort of secondary, and that's why I love coming up to the Maiden City and playing with the Hammies on Derry Day as well, and any other band that'll have me any other day of the year. I just like being on the street.
You mentioned about it there, about praise, and that being your sole, or well, one of your favourite things about parading, or marching with the band is parading. Have you missed doing like competitions and concerts and so on the last year as well?
Could be a long winter, Stephen. Sitting playing marches, and I think it's great, having that just variety of stuff to actually play, and it's even missing, the camaraderie of meeting the same people at the contests, for example, doing local concerts, things like that there. So I think it was maybe a body blow for the whole 52 weeks of the year aspect of the band, where it just stopped full stop, and we missed. I know for me, you missed out every aspect of it. And no, Matthew, with the march, as I say, it's very, very true that where does the majority of people see us? They see us in the street. They see our band in the street. They don't see us, unfortunately. I don't ever remember it when you see photographs of the Ulster Hall in the heyday of the championships, the Ulster Hall full of people. That doesn't happen now at contests. And so where is it a case of where do we expose our product most? And it will be on the street.
We show off on the street what we do, and people hear our road marches and everything else, but it's not showing the true potential of our part music bands and what they can do. And I think that's why the contesting is important. you know, and it's important for bands that we push ourselves and you know, challenge ourselves to learn and step outside our comfort zone. And as Stephen said, it's a long winter. I know in my own band, there's plenty of people who prefer the stage work and the contest work, and you know, playing for the little concerts and church services and all that sort of stuff. And it all adds up. You have your sort of your calendar of what you do, and we have a few players who do the indoor stuff, who don't parade, and vice versa. So it's you need to cater for all tastes and for all people. It's, you know, one of the things I did miss big style last year was we would have played Carl's in the shopping centres in Ballymena, and it was always great in the run up to Christmas to get into the festive spirit, to go and play the Carls. And again, you're playing to people who aren't seeking you out to listen to music. They're trying to grab a last minute bargain to put in their stocking, and it just so happens to see a flute band playing lovely arranged carols, you know, and showing off the musicality and what they can do, that it's not just marching. And I really missed that last year. It never just feels like Christmas without playing a lot of those carols and things with the band. And also it's a good excuse to eat mince pies as well.
And something like that would be important as well, as we to break down the barriers and misconceptions about bands as well.
Absolutely, because it's going to be very hard for someone to get offended by a Christmas carol. You know, so it's showing that, you know, you are versatile. You can play whatever's set in front of you. You know, you can play. We all know here, the three of us, you know, the sort of repertoire that our part music bands have. It's not just marches. We have classical, we have pop, we have sacred, we have whatever can be played musically can be arranged for our band, and our arrangers do a fantastic job, and everything else. But I think maybe what has come out of this is the realization that the online stuff is important to keep our profiles up and to keep recording our indoor stuff and putting it out there to as wide an audience as possible. And I think that's maybe the one bonus that has come out of this, to realize the importance of an online presence for what we do, and also for the history of recording, because this stuff doesn't disappear. It's in the ether forever. And it's a great sort of diary of what the band has done over the year and over the years. And it's nice to look back on that. Like, you know, there's videos now, you know, from our band Facebook page now. I think we've had it for over 10 years. And, you know, you look back at the size of some of the players, you know, wee totes and triangles and you know, concert flutes, and they were dummy fluting like we all started out. And now they're sitting in your important positions, you know, a solo concert and lead drummer and things like that. So it's nice to have that record as well.
You are both part of the Flute Band Association. What do you have coming up with that in the future?
Yeah, well, Stephen, Friday night past, we had a mass band in the Downshire parade in Banbridge. It's just nice to get out walking with the mass, you know, same again. It was 2 years since we had last paraded. More importantly, we've also an event coming on Saturday at Burnside Orange Hall outside Antrim. You recall that a couple of months ago, we asked through our Facebook page people to nominate their most 10 favourite marches. As a result, there was a list. So what we intend to do is play those on Saturday at Burnside Orange Hall. Informal social gathering as well, getting us all together, but also I know through yourselves in Londonderry Bands Forum, we'll be able to get some funding for Andrew Douglas to arrange or to put together a centenary march. I know we had great ideas, the possibility of having a big concert this year to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the country, which didn't materialise. You know, moving into next year, we are hoping we will get to go ahead to have our own choice contest in Lisburn. We had, say, put off going to Limerick a couple of years ago. Maybe thinking about that. We'll have our entertainments contest the end of May in Newton Arts, and maybe the possibility of contemplating going back to London to do the Lord Mayor show in November. But I think, unfortunately, so many of these events will still be dictated by what's happening in the country and health-wise.
Yeah, a couple of years ago, we had looked at even the possibility of going to the World War One battlefields, to the Somme and to Flanders. And one anniversary we had earmarked was, the 100 years of the Ulster Tower, and that's something I think that we have a wee bit more connection to than most in our park music bands, because W.B. Blythe was he attended the official opening of the tower. He was bandmaster of, I think, was it the 8th Rifles Band, and was at the Somme and everything else. And of course, he wrote and named so many of his original march compositions after battles and geographical features and everything else about the Western Front. So, we had discussed that, I think, at London, Stephen, the possibility of looking into that, but just last March just knocked all the momentum out of the light of that. And you can't really plan for that with all the restrictions and everything else, but hopefully it's something that we could maybe do in the future, play at the Thiepval Memorial, play at the Ulster Tower. And I think the icing in the cake would be to take part in the Men and Gate last post ceremony. It's a fantastic trip. I'm sure you guys have done it before, and lots of our bands have done it. I did it once as a guest, and do you know what? I'm just itching to get back and do the like of that again.
Well, I think it's fair to say about the Flute Band Association, what you have coming up, that being in a band has opened up opportunities for you. So what's been your personal highlights of being in bands, and what would you say to people, especially young people, as that's the theme for the Good Relations Week this year, if you're looking to join bands?
I think for me, Stephen, it's built up lifetime friendships, which you can never get rid of. That's the right personal thing. Highlights banding wise, I think, we have went to London to do the Lord Mayor's show, did the Belfast Tattoo a couple of years ago. And for me, those very much have been my highlights. And but as I say, for me, it was, you build up lifetime friendships in banding, and you'll never lose those. And as I said, people, it's your second, third family, where no matter what happens, you seem to turn to somebody in the band, business-wise, socially, or whatever. And it's no, as I say, it's for anybody thinking of joining the band, it's definitely. And also, I'm not saying it influenced my career, but as I say, you have senior people there who have guided you in different aspects of life. As I say, for me, one of the very important people was Jackie Brown, who taught me the flute from 8 or 9 years of age. He was my vice principal in Castlegore High School, and Jackie was very influential, with a lot of our members on their careers. And so, say for me, I have to thank the band for a lot.
Yeah, our band meet for 45 weeks in the year. Tuesday night, 2 hours practice, and there's weeks I would have seen people in the band more than I would see my own wife, and she'd probably thank the band for that, I would imagine. But as Stephen says, it's lifelong friendships, and not just in your own band, within the wider band and movement. I think, and the last half a dozen years, particularly the Flute Band Association, we've got a bit of momentum again. We've got a bit of camaraderie again, and the like of the trips away have been really, really enjoyable, and the open nights and everything else. And highlights about joining the band, I've played in Scotland, I've played in England, I've been at France and Belgium, and had an opportunity about 11 years ago to go to America, playing with some other musicians. And I'm not a great musician. There's plenty of other people out there better than me, but a wee bit of music's easy carried, as they say. And if you join a band, you will get a good quality instrument for free. You will get tuition from some of the best musicians about for free. And in this day and age, when there's not a lot of spare money about, I don't know, what is it for a music teacher now? At least £25 an hour. So there's economic reasons for joining a band if you want to learn to read music, if you want to learn an instrument and get an instrument. So it's all that there. But I think, as Stephen says, it's the opportunity and the friendship and the camaraderie that comes out of it and it's much wider than just music. It's personal friendships. It's people that would, have got your back no matter what happens, and hopefully you've got theirs as well.
Thank you to Stephen and Matthew for taking time out of their schedule to be interviewed for this podcast today. There will be one more podcast for Good Relations Week tomorrow